Good evening and welcome to I think it's a specially scheduled meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals on February 9th, 2026 for one case only, and it is Pulte, the Hedge Road and Prince Street 40B project. Tonight, we're going to do some summation of engineering stuff and a few other things, and then I will open it up to public comment. I would ask that during public comment, if you've spoken a couple of times and you're just going to kind of reiterate some of the information, maybe you want to save it because we know what it is. With that, I am going to ask the proponent who is going to speak. Go right ahead, sir.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair, members of the board. Again, my name is Essex Petrie of Pulte Homes of New England. Joining me here tonight is Stephanie Kiefer from Smolak and Vaughn, Peter Ellison from TEC Engineering, and Mark Manganello from LEC Environmental. Sorry, this feels really loud. But so we are really excited for the opportunity to present to the board and those in attendance tonight. As you mentioned, we've been hard at work on engineering and response to comments in particular, and since that last meeting, we've been able to provide you with a series of plans and analyses that have been adjusted to address comments that we've received from town staff, as well as the town's peer review engineering firm, Apex Engineering. And Pete is going to walk through that in detail for you later in the presentation. Additionally, Mark Manganello is going to provide you with an update from our coordination with the Conservation Commission regarding natural resource impacts on the site. But before I turn it over to Mark, I just had a couple quick comments that I wanted to turn to. So throughout this ZBA process, there have been a number of inquiries as to the status of Pulte's offer to undertake off-site improvements not otherwise required by Pulte's 40B proposed developments. And so just for clarity, there is no memorandum of understanding or MOU between Pulte Homes and the town of Plymouth. During the course of approximately a year and a half, Pulte and the town of Plymouth engaged in discussions as to whether Pulte's proposed affordable housing communities would utilize the local initiative program housing subsidy under Chapter 40B. And within that iterative process, a public-private collaboration was explored wherein the town would designate and support Pulte projects under the LIP program. And in working with the town staff and other stakeholders, including members of the select board, a prioritization list of items was identified as off-site local improvements for which Pulte's cooperation was desired in exchange for the town's support of the 40B projects under the LIP program. Those mutually requested supporting actions were outlined in a draft development agreement, which ultimately was not finalized. Again, those items, they're not required to successfully construct or service Pulte's proposed development, but they were identified and agreed upon through a long and coordinated effort with town staff, with Pulte, and the members of the select board. More recently, as we have been working with this board, with the town DPW, and with the town's peer review engineer to address comments and to revise our designs accordingly, Pulte is agreeing to include the following off-site mitigation items as part of the Ocean View North and Sandry Drive projects. The Hedge Road and Court Street emergency vehicle access improvement, which includes installing the emergency beacon warning at Hedge Road and Court Street as part of the Sandry Drive project. Plymouth Rail Trail connection, further establishing a connection of the North Plymouth Rail Trail between Hedge Road and Cordage Park, and particularly providing a curb-separated alignment along Sandry Drive within the existing pavement area of Sandry Drive as part of the Sandry project. A Prince Street turnaround, providing a vehicle turnaround for public use along Prince Street, consistent with prior discussions and a specific request from the Plymouth DPW as part of the Ocean View North project. Prince Street looped water main. We are agreed to construct a connection between the Prince Street water main and the Hedge Road water main, providing a loop in the system, improving water quality and service as part of the Ocean View North project. Pulte is agreeing to incorporate these elements into the Ocean View North and Sandry Drive project, again, not out of necessity for or direct benefit to Pulte, but because these are items that we had agreed upon to provide in a mutually agreed upon development agreement with the town. And so just one last quick item that I want to bring up and make a note of before I turn it over to Mark is that there was a recent article published in the Plymouth Independent last month regarding an EPA Superfund site adjacent to our property. It came up during our Conservation Commission process last month, and I just want to make a statement and make it clear that the property where that was is not the property that we are proposing to develop on, nor is it directly adjacent to the property that we are proposing to develop on. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark to give a summary of our coordination with the Conservation Commission.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. You all recall that I was here at the last meeting to discuss Natural Resources and Conservation Commission permitting. That presentation was intended to leave you with a few key points that I just wanted to reiterate tonight. Number one, the formal review of the project by the Conservation Commission cannot formally begin until this board reaches a decision. We're bound by a Wetlands Protection Act regulation that we must comply with in that regard. Number two, the wetland boundaries on the property have been formally reviewed and approved by the Conservation Commission, so they are not subject to change during this board's review or the Conservation Commission's review when the time comes. Number three, in our opinion, the project is permittable under the Wetlands Protection Act regulations when it does go before the Conservation Commission. I spoke a bit about the wetland disturbances associated with the project. Building number one, for example, has a small portion of the activities that are in the buffer zone to a wetland, no direct wetland disturbances. Building number two, all the development is completely outside of conservation jurisdiction. There's nothing happening there that is within a buffer zone or a resource area. There is a water line that Essex just referred to, which is a temporary disturbance within the coastal floodplain extending from the development over to Hedge Road. That's the only wetland disturbance associated with building number two. And building number three off Sandry Drive is a previously developed site. There are disturbances to buffer zones and wetland resource areas there, but they're all confined to the existing developed footprint. And that part of the project's been designed to improve wetlands protection by reducing impervious surface coverage and providing stormwater management where none currently exists. So those were the three key points from the previous presentation. We also notified the Commission that we intended to present the project informally to the Conservation Commission at their January 13th meeting, which we did. We received some feedback there. They requested to conduct an on-site meeting, which happened on that Friday, January 16th, on a very cold day before the snow fell, so everyone had a chance to see the site without snow cover. The primary concern that came out of that site walk was a sewer pump station on building number one, which is located or was located partially within the buffer zone to the wetland. They expressed to us that they would like to see that moved out of the buffer zone if we could. We immediately addressed that by moving it outside of the buffer zone, and the revised plans that have been submitted to you reflect that revision. There were no other significant concerns with the project expressed by the Commission. Hopefully you have a copy of the letter that the Conservation Commission submitted to this board after that site walk. They summarized what I just summarized. I think the letter reflects what I just described. So if there are any questions about the Conservation Commission review process, I'd be happy to answer them at the end of this presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Peter now.
Any questions? All right. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Peter Ellis, and I'm a civil engineer with TEC. Just going to scroll down. So what I'd like to do is try to summarize some of the process that we've been going through on the engineering, stormwater, water and sewer design process. We are now through the third iteration of the plans and trading letters back and forth with both the town engineering department and Apex, the board's peer review agent. So starting with building one, like Mark mentioned, we did shift the pump station for building one outside of that 100-foot buffer zone. That can be seen here. And the solution was essentially to take that pump station and shift it approximately 5 feet to the south toward the bottom of the page to pull that entirely outside of that 100-foot buffer zone. We've had a lot of coordination with the fire department throughout the process as well. We included a memo from the department in the latest submission that basically gives their full sign-off on the project as it relates to water pressure, the availability of water volume to serve the building's proposed fire suppression system, the location of fire hydrants at the site, site access for their largest apparatus, and circulation into the site and around the building. So you can see here coming building one off of Court Street. We've provided fire truck turning templates within the latest submission that shows their largest apparatus can enter into the site, fully circulate all the way around building one, and then back out through the fire access drive at the rear of the building and back out onto Court Street safely. There have been numerous changes to the stormwater design at building one and the model based on comments from the town engineering and Apex engineering. I think to summarize it or to give you kind of the most significant changes would be related to the infiltration basin at building one, because this is the primary location for infiltration of stormwater treatment. The most significant change was to lower the bottom elevation of that basin down to a point where we could avoid impacting steep slopes adjacent to the basin, so that the design is fully compliant with the Mass Stormwater Handbook recommendations. And then another tweak was to raise the elevation of the sediment forebay, which is the initial capture point and the initial point of treatment prior to discharge of that water back into the infiltration basin. We've made changes to the erosion control plan, so we've added additional temporary settling basins to the design.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Hold on, he's going to work on it here.
No, we did get it, yeah. There is some of
I think we may have a temporary solution here.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Thank you.
Testing. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, picking back up on where I left off, we did make some adjustments to the erosion control plan at Building 1 to add additional settling basins so that during the construction period, basically not a single drop of water is going to be able to escape this site without first getting through a settling basin, being treated so that all of that settlement from the construction activity can settle out of the water before it spills over.
I read somewhere that those were going to be afterwards dug out and reused, and the elevation of them is going to change?
Yes, sir, that's correct. I can show you where that is. So the large infiltration basin here, the bottom elevation of that in the final condition is elevation 12. However, in the construction condition, we're also going to use this same location as a temporary settling basin, and the bottom of that settling basin will be at elevation 13 throughout construction. So as you can imagine, throughout construction, settlement from the site, sediment, sorry about that, from the site will enter into that temporary settling basin and kind of pile up throughout construction. Once we get to a point where the rest of the stormwater system is in place and ready to be coming online, the contractor will come in and excavate the bottom of that settling basin. A full foot of material will be removed, over a foot actually, and then they'll come back in.
Below the 12-foot elevation?
Below the 13-foot elevation, which is where the temporary settling basin will be dug out to.
Okay, so, all right.
So basically all that sediment that builds up during construction will be excavated out, removed from the site, so that they're then working with a clean sand bottom.
Okay.
We re-looked at the earthwork for both Building 1 and Building 2 to redesign and tweak the grading to get that to be a balanced site. So if you look at the net earthwork cut and fill numbers for Building 1 and 2, that comes out to 0. We've provided slope stabilization measures. There are 2-to-1 slopes proposed around both sites. So we've proposed a mix of fabric, loam, seed, and in some case stone to make sure that those 2-to-1 slopes are stable throughout construction. And finally, we've provided updated water and sewer models for Building 1 that we believe kind of finalizes those reviews with the engineering department and with Apex, and shows that there's adequate capacity and availability in those municipal systems for these buildings to come online. So to get into some of the updates to Building 2, probably the most substantial update is the realigned entrance driveway into the Building 2 site. This is the third iteration of this driveway connection to Prince Street, shown here at a 90-degree angle. It's essentially centered on the proposed Building 2. And that 90-degree angle is also centered in between the two abutting properties across the street, which are 35 Prince here and 31 Prince over here. And that was deliberate. We had heard from abutters that there was concern about headlight pollution coming into and out of the site. And we had also heard comments from the engineering department that they had preferred to see the driveway at a 90-degree angle to Prince Street, which is more consistent with design standards. Also on Building 2, we've eliminated the trail connection between the site and the rail trail. That was formerly located here. And the reason that that was eliminated from the plan was we were hearing a lot of comments from engineering department that related to the cutting of public trees within that rail trail easement, and also concerns about stormwater that would be generated from that path. Sorry, I keep breaking things. Oh, there it is. Carrying on here with Building 2, we have adjusted the design of the sewer connection for Building 2, which is located here and connects out to the 30-inch municipal main that is located within that rail trail right-of-way. There were concerns from the engineering department about the slope of the pipe. So the way that we had adjusted our design was to essentially provide an additional sewer manhole with a drop structure in it on site so that the lateral that connects out to the main is now at 2%, which is the preferred slope for that pipe. Again, we've had numerous adjustments to the stormwater design and model based on the engineering department and peer review comments. But essentially where we have left off here is primarily the site is caught in catch basins and flows to a detention basin located here for the initial round of treatment, and then that spills over and discharges to a subsurface system that infiltrates and treats the stormwater prior to the final discharge point being in the backwoods here and out to the wetland on site. Similar to Building 1, we've had quite a bit of fire department coordination, and we have their sign off on water pressure, volume, hydrant locations, site access and circulation for Building 2. Again, we have added additional settling basins to the site so that there's not a drop of dirty water that's going to be escaping the site during the construction phase. We have balanced the earthwork between Building 1 and Building 2. We've provided those same slope stabilization measures at Building 2, and we have provided those updated water and sewer studies to show that there is available capacity to serve these two buildings. So for Sandry Drive, we have made some adjustments as well. Again, starting with the fire department coordination, they've also signed off on the Sandry Drive building and layout for water pressure, volume, hydrant locations, site access, and circulation. As far as stormwater design and model adjustments, we've added a swale along Sandry Drive to provide some additional treatment to that portion of the site. That would be located here. So compared to existing conditions today, there's no catch basins, there's no treatment at all. The water from Sandry Drive flows overland and flows directly into the wetlands without receiving any treatment. What we're proposing to do is to basically capture this portion of the driveway and send it to what's called a grass channel that provides 50% TSS removal prior to discharge. We've also added a water quality unit to the closed drainage system to increase the amount of TSS removal that we get from the stormwater treatment system. That water quality unit is located here. It's kind of the final layer of defense for stormwater from the parking lot and the rooftop before it discharges out to the wetlands. And that provides 80% TSS removal as the final line of defense prior to discharge. We've provided a phased construction plan for construction of the driveway and the new sidewalk into the site. So that would be this section of the property here. And the phased construction plan, essentially what it accomplishes is building that portion of the site in 2 phases so that the existing connection between Hedge Road and the waterfront trail to the beach can remain open throughout the entire construction phase. And finally, for Sandry Drive, we've provided the updated water and sewer models that we believe shows that the municipal system has adequate capacity for this building to come online. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Essek.
Thank you, Pete. This is you. All right, so now I'm just going to walk through in a moderate level of detail our approach for landscape architecture for the site. Generally speaking, we've developed our landscaping program based on coordination with Patrick Farrer and the Conservation Commission and the department really going through their preferred species and plantings. And in addition, the plant species and the schedule will be part of our notice of intent process with the Conservation Commission, so we'll be going through additional level of review with them. But generally, the program is composed of native, drought and salt-tolerant species selected to be tough, durable, and provide seasonal interest throughout the year. So for Building 1, starting at the Court Street side, we're proposing 2 stone entry piers along Court Street just inside the property. Each pier will have a landscape bed of flowers and shrubs immediately surrounding it, with a series of trailing shrubs as you head down into the site. Shade trees are proposed along the driveway and the parking areas throughout the program. There are additionally a series of planting beds that are approximately 4 feet wide along the perimeter of the entire building. These areas include a mix of shrubs, ornamental grasses, and ground covers to soften the building edges and enhance the pedestrian scale interest. If you note the back right corner of the building, we have a small outdoor seating area to include benches, ornamental flowering trees, and perennial plantings. The recycling and pump station location will be screened with fencing, but also with evergreen plantings. And then in particular for more site-specific to Building 1, along the perimeter and the southern boundary, towards the top of the slope, we're proposing a series of natural screening buffers of white fir and Colorado blue spruce trees between our property and the neighboring properties along Prince Street. Additionally, we'll also investigate opportunities to adjust our grading plan for the slopes in this location to preserve as many of the existing large growth trees that are currently there today. Ideally, we're able to preserve as many as we can to help with the vegetated screening and buffer between that building and the neighbors on Prince Street. All of the disturbed areas are proposed to be restored with loam and native seed mixes with a varying seed mix tailored to site conditions. There'll be a lawn seed mix in areas with slopes for up to 3-to-1, a native erosion control and restoration mix based on slopes greater than 3-to-1, and then the basin seed mix will be used in the detention basin areas. And again, those seed mixes have all been approved and coordinated with Concom, and also will be going through their review as well. So just to move to Building 2, as Pete mentioned, we have adjusted the location of the driveway on Prince Street. There will be a series of evergreen trees planted along Prince Street between, as I mentioned, the turnaround location. So it will be a series of evergreen trees planted between that turnaround location and the adjusted driveway location. And then in addition, there'll be a few oak trees planted in the slope directly behind those. Here there will also be a stone pier along the driveway edge, accompanied by a planting bed with a series of shrubs and flowers adjacent to the sidewalk access. This is a kind of a one-way circulation loop, so heading down kind of to the left here. There will be a series of evergreen trees with firs and junipers and blue spruces planted along the top of that berm, both in this area here, as well as further up the slope here where appropriate to provide additional screening, natural screening with the neighbors along Prince Street and then also along Cordage. Additionally, there will be a privacy fence along the left edge, providing more screening between the building and the neighbors on Cordage Street. Similar to Building 1, there's a series of planting beds around the entire perimeter of the building, approximately 4 feet in width, with a mix of shrubs, ornamental grasses, and ground covers. Again, there's also in the back left corner of this building a small seating area, which will include benches, ornamental flowering trees, and perennials. The privacy fence continues along the back of Building 2. And there will also be additional screening around the recycling enclosure. And then coming up the hill, leaving the site for Building 2, we are proposing a screening row of arborvitae along the slope and the curve right here, along with a cedar privacy fence to help, again, with the screening of headlights and the concern with the headlight glare for the neighbors across the street. I think with the treatments that we're proposing, both with the vegetative screening, as the fencing, and adjusting the location of the driveway, will help solve that issue. And then similarly, all the disturbed areas will be planted with loam and native seed mixes appropriate for those site conditions. And then just to get to Sandry Drive, as you drive up Sandry, you'll notice there'll be the curb-separated bike path on your right coming up this way, the wetland area on your left. We will be providing a more formal curb cut for access to maintain access to the Cordage property, as well as for the bike path. Across from that, there will be another stone entry pier with an accompanying plant bed and shrubs and plantings. The parking area on the left and then surrounding the building will be planted with shade trees and ornamental trees. And similar to Building 1 and 2 on Ocean View North, the building will be, the perimeter of the building will be planted with a 4-foot bed and a mix of tall grasses and ground covers. Additionally, there will be a shaded seating area in the back corner of the building here for an amenity space for the homeowners. And then the southern side of the driveway, there'll be a row of oak trees along this side, providing some separation between the building, the driveway access, and the railroad right-of-way. And with that, we'll turn it over back to the board for your comments, questions.
Okay, well, might as well start with that one, we're right up there. Well, this is up there. Where is the rail trail on that? Isn't that on the edge of the parking lot? Or?
The rail trail runs right in Sandry Drive. Currently today, it's just striping along the edge of the pavement area along Sandry, and then cuts through into a gravel path on the other side right here.
Okay, so, and what do your finished path, what'll be gravel, or is it?
No, it'll be paved. It'll be curb separated, so it'll be more of a comfortable level for pedestrians and cyclists using the path, so there'll be separation from vehicles.
Okay, then back on to the one on Building 2. And I was gonna bring this up, because I assume the straight in, remember you had talked about putting in a curved entrance? That's been abandoned, and now it's just a straight.
That's correct.
Okay, because I'm sitting here, God, these don't coincide.
Yes, no, so we had, that was, as you mentioned, we had looked at an entrance kind of, we'll call it off of the end of Prince Street. That was our second option, and then based on comments we received both from neighbors and stakeholders, but also in coordination with the engineer and the fire department, that was not preferred, so we went back to the drawing board again and looked at this option, and we found that this option seems to satisfy as much as we can.
And the other thing, so then, I got a few more things, and the turnaround, is that little square down at the bottom, so it's on your property?
That's correct.
That would be the turnaround?
Yep.
Okay. And then a couple of questions. When you went before Conservation, I was one of my concerns I had brought up earlier was that pump,
Yep.
On Building 1. So that moved completely out of the buffer zone now?
That's correct. Yeah, it was in there. It was it was a small area that was overlapping, but there was enough room to pull it entirely outside of the 100-foot buffer zone,
And
so,
that's an underground one, right?
correct.
Okay. Then the other thing too, at the Conservation Commission hearing, so I'm just curious, you know, on the loop connection,
Yep.
was that brought up? Because is that any of that in there? I wouldn't want to be, you know, hit with it afterwards.
No, we mentioned that and brought that up and talked to that with the Conservation Commission. And there, see, this is the area right here coming through from Building 2 over to Hedge Road. And it's a temporary condition, and don't expect any concern. And it was discussed with Conservation Commission. They did not have any issue with it at the time, and it would certainly be part of our NOI package when we go through that review process with them.
Okay, all right. Well, for now, go ahead.
Anybody else? David?
It's a broad thing. Part of our package recently was the DPW responses, point by point, dated, I think, February 4th. Have you had a chance to digest their comments? A good number of them, you know, acknowledge the adjustments you've made, but many of them still say things are not satisfied yet. So broadly speaking, what kind of response would you have to the DPW comments on both the Sandry and the hedge?
So, Board Member Peck, the memos that we received and reviewed, got them Thursday and Friday. I have to be honest, there are only maybe 2 or 3 comments that I see that are not closed out. I feel that we are actually in really good shape. I'm happy to walk through any specific concerns that come to you, but we actually, in coordination with Rick and his department, we felt that we were in close to complete with his comments.
Well, it seemed to me, you know, some of the comments would become future conditions that you need to meet.
So, yeah, so if you're referring to, sorry, but like as far as need to be completed prior to construction or prior to occupancy.
Yeah, I mean,
those,
for instance, easements. See, on one of his
Sure.
comment, you know, any improvements that are in town land, you need to have easements. But the kind of things I'm looking at are, I think on page 7 of the one for Hedge, there's an underground infiltration where it's calculated at 10 years, and they recommend it be modified to a 25-year, and something's acknowledged but not satisfied. We have, again, there's waiver requests, the TIA, you know, the traffic thing said it would be adjusted after the peer review is complete. We have.
so just on the traffic one, I believe that the stamp TIA is submitted, and you should have it. You have it in your package. That's the comment referring to the TIA was just a signed version, stamped and signed version of the TIA that includes the comments that were received from the peer review, and that is included as part of your package. And as far as the number 7, that is it's a recommendation from the engineer, not a requirement. It's certainly something that, this was new to this package, and it's certainly something that we can look into.
And another one is on the Sandry comments, I think on page 4, number 4, that the EPA, is it the MS4 permit? It was likewise not satisfied. So broadly, just, you know, I'm interested in ones where he says not satisfied or partially satisfied, because it was issued relatively recently, but want to see what you.
Sure, yeah, no, and those other ones, as I mentioned, the TIA one is settled. The comment regarding the comment acknowledged, the comment is closed out, but we're willing to coordinate more with Rick if there's something that makes sense. We'll look into expanding that system, what it means to go from a 10 to a 25 at their request. And for the EPA comment that you mentioned on Sandry Drive and the MS4, it is, again, something that the town engineer we're coordinating with them. It's a little bit of a gray area as far as how that gets addressed relative to a 40B project and being a state DEP requirement versus a town stormwater requirement. And so, again, as you mentioned, we just got this on Thursday, I believe, for the Sandry Drive one. But the ability to satisfy the request related to the phosphorus removal is something that we're talking about with Pete, and we were talking about this morning, actually, as far as what it would take if it were to get to that, to get to that level of phosphorus removal.
Okay, thank you.
Dave?
Could you go back to that item number, page 4, related to Sandy Drive? And it states that it's a United States Environmental Protection Agency, and you require a permit for that? And please reach out to the EPA to determine if the town can grant waivers of these regulations. So, reading that, in order for us to deal with that issue, we would have to, we may not be able to waive that condition.
Correct, and that's understood, and again, sorry, didn't you?
Yeah, so you'd have to meet that condition, you'd have to make sure that that regulation by the EPA is satisfied before you build.
Correct.
And that this board may not have the authority to even grant you that waiver if requested.
Understood, and this is a comment that, again, has been bandied about for a bit during this design process, and there was a little bit of unsurety as exactly how to handle it. So the latest comment that we got back on Thursday recommending we reach out to the EPA, that's something that we are going to look at again, or we're also going to look at the ability to address the phosphorus removal comment from the beginning on site and potentially eliminate the request for a waiver altogether.
Caroline, can I ask you a question? So in relation to that comment, have you seen that comment? I have. And since it's a federal requirement and that the town may not be able to grant that waiver, can this permit be approved?
So as you indicate,
No, you can, or whatever you suggest. Maybe we can give you a microphone. Because there'll be more questions for you, Caroline. I'm sorry about that.
in answer to your question, the ZBA has no authority to waive anything under state law or federal requirements. So if a waiver of any sort is required from the EPA, that's something that's going to have to occur outside of the ZBA's 40B process.
Could we not grant this approval until the EPA assent has been satisfied?
Typically, we include a condition that says, very generically, that the applicant has to secure all other state, federal permits and approvals before they can even apply for a building permit. We can put something in that's a little bit more specific and addressed to this issue that's been raised by DPW, to be a little more specific about requiring confirmation or something to that effect from the EPA before a building permit is issued.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I have questions about other things that we were talking about last meeting, but I'll wait on those until we get through the water comments. Fine.
Pete? Michael? No. Well, no, go right ahead.
No, go ahead, no,
I'm all
I
set
got
for
it. I
now.
was looking at
I want to know about landscaping plans and stuff like that. Let's talk about that. Michael?
well, actually, they disregarded the other driveways, that's what I had just asked. So I don't have a problem there anyways, but, yeah, there is a couple on Apex's thing that, they conditioned as she had mentioned, that we're gonna have to condition on that, so.
All right. Have you anything else you want to, whoa. Have you anything else?
Just one additional comment on that, the number 4 about the EPA waiver request. Again, I just want to reiterate, based on what we read, that we got Thursday, it is something that we are continuing to investigate, and we are confident that we will have a solution for that in the very near future.
Okay, okay. At this, yes, go right ahead.
So I'd like to ask a question on the Hedge Road DPW comment. It's on page 13. On number 4, it says sewer pump station enforce main design must be submitted to the DPW sewer division for review. So when will that be done?
And again, that actually was also submitted and is part of the package. I'm not sure if DPW didn't notice it in there, but I believe the board has it, and it is, without the lack of a better term, it's in the town's cloud system somewhere.
I didn't see it. Did you see it, anybody?
No.
Well, what I did see was among our 704 pages of submissions, there was a sewer design in there dated December 2024. So one of my other comments as we go ahead is that we would want a current design that meets current standards that might have changed in the last 14 or 15 months.
Absolutely, we would certainly expect that, the pump station design would go under thorough review, certainly, prior to any construction, and as is fairly typical, and would certainly be designed to meet current requirements.
The situation here is that we should have that information already.
Again, sir, I'm positive that we did submit it, and it is something that you do have, and the DPW did have at the time as well.
Okay. Anything else from board members? You all set, Mike?
Yeah, for now.
Okay, now,
Mr. Chair, one more.
Yes.
While we're talking about Conservation Commission, I recall the letter from the Concom saying they were requesting a peer review of the conservation issues? Okay.
Yep, that came up during our meeting, and we're certainly absolutely on board with that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
that's an unusual situation. And I've commented on it before, and I'm going to comment again on it. You will have that done after we probably already made our decisions. So that peer review and everything really is of no consequence to us. We can't use information after the fact. Those are the kind of things that we really would like to have now.
Chair, I appreciate it, and that is a unique situation to me and to us as well. That is something that we have not typically ever had to do, is separate it. It was brought to the Concom's attention by a concerned citizen that there is language that does require that separation. Unfortunately, what it does is it hamstrings the ZBA from having the ability to have that full review process from Concom. It is not my preference, it is not our preference, and it's not how we typically have handled it.
I understand, and I understand.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
I understand the history of it, but I want you to know that that is extremely unusual. Okay, if there isn't any more from board members, and if you have nothing else to add at this point, I would like to open this to public comment.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Yes. For those in the audience, I'm going to ask you again, during this period of public comment, if you've spoken before, and if all you want to do is reiterate what you've said before, we've heard it before. So please allow people that might not have been able to speak at another meeting or been present at another meeting, let them have some time first. With that, who in the audience would like to start this off? Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the Pulte, representative, thank you very much for the opportunity to address this board for my concerns as a resident at 14 Holmes Terrace.
Your name, sir, please.
My name is Dr. Rex Denton. I live at 14 Holmes Terrace. The first question I have is the nature of the Superfund site and its distance from the actual site which is going to be developed. How far away is it?
Just, sir, state your questions to us. If they
Right.
choose to
Sure.
answer them, they will.
I'm concerned at the distance away from the Superfund site to the designated development. I'm concerned as to the nature of the contaminants in the Superfund site. As a trained toxicologist, I have a full understanding that many of these sites were rough, bermed sites where sludge and other organic contaminants were dumped. The underlying hydrology of such facilities means that disturbances to the water table beneath them changes the direction and disposition of the contaminants towards or away from existing water supplies. Anyone that's siphoned gasoline understands you can move water from a low point to a high point to an even lower point. What is going to be the impact of the unknown contaminants that I don't know what they are on the underlying water table as it moves that water ultimately to sea level, which is the lowest point? I applaud Mr. Conroy for also understanding that in Superfund sites, they are barred from residential development. And I'm curious as to whether or not the buffer zone itself would actually change as a result of changes to the hydrology of the underlying water table. And with that, I will say thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Who's next, please? Yes, ma'am. Ladies first.
Hi, Mr. Is this on? You can hear me? Doesn't sound like it is.
Oh,
I
wait a
am
minute
close.
now.
Is it on?
Yes, one person at a time, ladies. The rest of you sit down. Okay? We're going to do this.
Is this microphone on? Yes, it is.
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And Carol Jankowski, Prince Street. And to your point, Chairman, you'll be delighted to know that I am going to bring up a couple of different points this evening. First and foremost, I want to talk about safety. And interestingly enough, just on January 29th, in a sobering presentation to the Select Board, Plymouth's police and fire chiefs warned that the town's emergency services have reached a tipping point. Now, I'm going to go on to a related topic, but I think it's quite interesting and really sets the stage for what I'd like to say. Safety, the paramount concern of North Plymouth residents since Pulte's initial proposal has been safety. So imagine the reactions and concerns when we read Andrea Estes' January 12th article revealing that a Superfund toxic waste dump is not only in our neighborhood, but adjacent to Ocean North, Pulte's proposed Sandy Drive building. This revelation prompted many of us in the neighborhood to read the required 5-year reports issued by the EPA raising further alarm. And I quote from the 2023 report, "The risks posed by climate change in New England could possibly impact the protectiveness of the remedy at the site in the future," the report said. "The impacts of sea level rise, flooding, and/or storm surge could possibly adversely affect the clean soil cover because the site is located near Plymouth Harbor," the report continued. "Sea level rise could cause groundwater to rise. If the groundwater is contaminated, that could be an issue." In addition, the report also suggests that any increased activity on or near the site, very important phrase there, should warrant further review. There has definitely been increased human activity on that trail because of the paved area from that goes from from Nelson, excuse me, all the way down to Hedge. That trail is traversed, with the exception of snow, daily by lots and lots of folks in our neighborhood, from other parts of Plymouth, and from other towns as well. This group of concerned residents who read the reports and have had conversations decided that we would compose a letter. We decided that action was needed. A letter and a petition was drafted.
Ma'am,
It is
you have
signed
30
by
seconds
it is
left.
signed by 158 residents. It was filed with the DEP and the EPA on January 27th. And tonight, you will hear that letter. Thank you.
Stop right there, please. Sir, you had your hand up. Yes. Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name's Scott Gustafson. I reside at 30 Dyer Pass in Plymouth. I'm not in a butter. I'm not even part of the North Plymouth neighborhood, but my son is. He lives over on Swasso Lane. I came tonight just to learn a little bit about what was going on with the project, and I looked, when I walked in, I was surprised to see so many people out on a cold January night, historically freezing cold January night, to come fight for their rights.
February.
What's that?
It's February.
Not February, whatever. January, February, I'm, working too much, I think. But to see them out and fighting for the rights of their neighborhood, because this is a terrible project. I've lived in Plymouth my whole life. Look, Mr. Chairman, I've seen what you do and how you abide by the law and the zoning rules. Just because something is the law or is permittable doesn't make it right. And this project is absolutely wrong for the town of Plymouth in that location. Now, I listening to the first speaker, as a construction laborer who's previously worked on many brownfield Superfund sites, he's absolutely right. As soon as you start to disturb something around a hazardous waste site, you change all of the migration of that groundwater. I've been clamming in Plymouth my whole life. One of my favorite spots was over on the other side of the harbor. I can't clam there anymore because of the proximity of the wastewater treatment plant. And now they're going to disturb something so close to this neighborhood, and there's going to be a migration of that groundwater, and I'd be really worried, and I think it deserves more review. And just based on some of the things tonight that you brought up about the EPA, that's a real issue. But as a construction worker and as a representative of the laborers union, I started to look at the minutes of the previous meetings. I wanted to learn about this project and what was going on. Pretty familiar with 40B, pretty familiar with big residential projects, pretty familiar with Pulte homes. And I didn't see anything about worker protections. I didn't see anything about worker rights. I didn't see anything about good jobs. I didn't see anything about any of that. And I would have to take a deeper look, and maybe somebody else can look to see if there's any type of state funding or town funding or any of that bonding that may require prevailing wages on this project. We're going to look at OSHA violations. Look, a lot of these projects, they call them affordable housing. The workers that the companies like this hire don't even make enough money to be able to afford to live in those types of in those projects. So as a representative of working people, who is totally against this project, by the way, if it does happen, if by law it does have to happen, I can promise the people of this neighborhood that I'm gonna be watching it. I'll call OSHA if there's safety violations. I'll try to make sure if there's prevailing wages, we'll be pulling certified payrolls. We'll watch all the zoning, all the building codes, and we'll shut it down. We'll do cease and desist. If we have to do job actions out there, we will. Because you know what? Projects like this in our town deserve to be have well-paying jobs.
You have
no
30
matter what.
seconds left, sir.
I'm done, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please, no more applause. All right, the first girl in line, go right ahead.
Ann Jones, 9 Prince Street. To whom it may concern, we are the residents of Plymouth writing to respectfully request review and oversight by the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection in coordination with the U.S. Environment Protection Agency as appropriate regarding a large-scale residential development proposed immediately adjacent to a federally designated Superfund site under active 5-year review. A 163 Chapter 40B housing development proposed by Pulte Homes has received preliminary approval from Mass Housing and is currently proceeding through the comprehensive permit process before the Plymouth Zoning Board of Appeals. One of the 3 proposed buildings, a 6-story residential structure, is located directly adjacent to the Plymouth Harbor/Cannon Engineering Group Superfund site. Recent media coverage, as well as a 5-year report from the EPA for the Superfund, can be found by scanning the QR codes on our letter. The purchase and sale documents submitted by the developer to Mass Housing and to the Plymouth ZBA characterize the project area as free from nearby toxic contamination. Given the documented history and current regulatory status of the adjacent Superfund site, as well as known soil contamination on and near the development parcel itself, these representations raise significant concern and warrant further review. The adjacent Superfund site was listed in 1983 due to release from 2 large above-ground storage tanks used between 1976 and 1980 to store heterogeneous mixture of industrial wastes, including solvents, plating wastes, pesticides, polycystic aromatic hydrocarbons, metals, and other unidentified hazardous substances. EPA remedial actions focused primarily on removal and visibility contaminated surface soils, dismantling and off-site disposal of tanks and piping, limited subsurface sampling, and placement of clean fill to cap remaining contamination. EPA records indicate that the selected remedy was designed to allow limited commercial or industrial use and specifically restricted exposure to residential and recreational usage. Hazardous substances remain at the site at levels that require ongoing institutional controls applied to the property deed. The remedy relies on contaminant and institutional controls rather than full removal. Furthermore, no monitoring wells from the Superfund site are located on the southeastern boundary of the restricted area, which
You have 30 seconds
which
left.
borders the proposed condominium parcel. So the question arises as to whether pollutants from the Superfund site have migrated to the proposed condo location, as such activities that could disturb soils and other exposure pathways, including excavation, grading, pile installation, utility work, and adjacent construction, warrant careful reevaluation to ensure continued protectiveness of human health and the environment.
Thank you. Is there anyone else besides the lady standing in line that would like to speak? Yes, Mr. Serkey. And I remind you also, Mr. Serkey, it's a 3-minute time limit.
Rich Serkey, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. I want to raise a threshold question that hasn't been discussed yet about this project. The purchase and sale agreement between the property owners and Pulte was contingent upon Pulte receiving approval of one of the following 3 proposals in the following order. Proposal A was for 132 units, and it required a zoning change. Proposal B was for 104 units, and it required a special permit. Proposal C was for 132 units, and it required a Chapter 40B comprehensive permit. What you have before you tonight is Project D in my nomenclature. It calls for 163 units, requiring a Chapter 40B comprehensive permit. This is a project that was not listed in the purchase and sale agreement. The project before you, strike that, the purchase and sale agreement further provided that a closing date would be no later than March 16 of 2026, a little more than a month from now. By that date, Pulte would have the following options. It would be able to waive all contingencies and close, or it could terminate the purchase and sale agreement and receive its deposit back. The purchase and sale agreement provided that it had the option to extend for 6 months, but the project they've put before you is not one of the projects that was set forth in the purchase and sale agreement. So, in my opinion, Pulte cannot extend the closing date beyond March 16. And as a result of that fact, they only have 2 options on March 16: close or terminate the P&S. This is a threshold issue, and I think the board has the right to know what Pulte's intentions will be on March 16 before any more time and money and energy is spent reviewing this project.
Thank you, sir. Go right ahead.
Thank you.
Your
Hi.
name, please. This is being recorded, so.
Yes, I'm aware. Thank
You're
you.
going down in history.
Excellent. I love it.
There you go.
My name is Jen Benoit, and I live with my husband at 15 Prince Street, along with my wonderful coalition of neighbors. I'm going to continue following up with Anne, reading the EPA letter, the letter that we, North Plymouth residents, submitted to the EPA on January 27th. Of additional concern is a gravel bicycle and pedestrian path constructed in recent years to connect the former end of the North Plymouth Rail Trail, Seaside Trail at Hedge Road, to Cordage Park. This path traverses the proposed 6-story building parcel at Sandry Drive and runs immediately adjacent to and potentially within the Superfund site restricted area boundary. Portions of fencing that previously limited access along site edge appear to have been removed, and informal footpaths have been cut from the trail towards the ocean into the Superfund parcel. Persons experiencing homelessness have also been known to reside on the Superfund parcel. Elevated arsenic levels have been identified on portions of the 40B parcel, raising questions about historical fill, site conditions, and whether additional characterization is warranted prior to residential construction. There have also been indications that substantial levels of arsenic have been identified on the other parcel at 39 Hedge Road, which is not only the location of 2 other condominium buildings planned for this project, but are also adjacent to at least one of the other 2 4-story buildings and identified wetlands. There are additional concerns related to climate change, including rising sea levels and increased storm surge events, which could overtop the Superfund site, erode or compromise existing caps, and mobilize contaminated soil onto adjacent properties, creating additional public health risks and future remediation challenges. Half of the Superfund site is in the flood zone AE11, which is subject to 100-year floods. In light of these concerns, we respectfully request that DEP, in coordination with the EPA as appropriate, review the proposed development in relation to the Superfund site and its land use limitations. Require comprehensive characterization of soils on the developmental parcel, including evaluation of potential contaminant migration from the adjacent site. Evaluate risks associated with excavation, dust generation, and soil disturbance during construction. Assess whether existing institutional controls remain adequate and whether additional controls, remediation, or restrictions are necessary prior to residential occupancy.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. testing the ground throughout the 39 Hedge Road to confirm whether or not arsenic or other hazardous substances are in the soil. We believe that early review and oversight is critical to ensuring the protection of public health and safety and the environmental and to preventing avoidable risk before construction begins, if it proceeds. Given the unresolved environmental and public health questions raised by this letter, I respectfully request an extension to allow for further response from the EPA. I believe taking this additional time is reasonable and is in the best interest of the community instead of simply issuing a permit with contingencies like the EPA permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on. Your name?
Katie Cook, Prince Street. The EPA did acknowledge receipt of the letter that was just read and noted they would review and be in touch. Due to the hazardous conditions identified and the safety concerns the community has, I'm asking the ZBA and Pulte to grant a 90-day extension beyond the 180 days to keep the comprehensive permit hearing open and give time for the EPA to review and respond to the residents of Plymouth in the petition submitted. Additionally, I'm requesting the ZBA to ask Pulte to come to a future meeting to present on their plans for safety during construction. A project of this magnitude needs to have a comprehensive safety plan prepared and followed. At prior meetings, this board has indicated safety is a priority, and we haven't heard any discussion from Pulte on how they plan to keep the community safe during an intense 3-year construction period for the densely populated area of North Plymouth. As a homeowner abutting one of the sites with 2 young kids, I have significant concerns for the safety of the community surrounding this area. Specifically, here are a few things I'd like to hear addressed. Will a pre-construction survey be done to ensure vibrations from construction do not compromise the integrity of abutting properties, foundations, chimneys, walls, etc.? What is the comprehensive vibration monitoring and reporting plan during construction? How do they plan to protect the integrity of the asbestos cement-lined water main on Prince Street, which is very old and brittle? I'm concerned about friable material being created and causing a serious health risk. What is the plan for dust monitoring, reporting, and mitigation to ensure safe breathing for our community members? What is the plan for soil contaminant monitoring? What is the plan for safe idling laws to ensure the community isn't breathing in diesel fumes from delivery trucks and construction vehicles? What is the plan for safety measures of the construction site itself? I'd expect a full perimeter fencing to keep people out, store materials, and provide parking for construction workers. What is the plan to reduce high noise conditions, especially with children in the area? Lastly, and most importantly, how will Pulte ensure the safety of our children walking to school in their bus stops or enjoying the fresh air playing in their neighborhood? I'd like to see construction, including deliveries, begin for the day after school starts and conclude for the day prior to school release so that we have confidence that the children can arrive to and from school safely and be able to enjoy some time outdoors. Additionally, no weekend and holiday work should be permitted for the same reason. This is all common practice in densely populated areas. I have significant concerns of large construction vehicles traversing through our quiet side streets, some of which don't even have sidewalks. Let's not wait for an event to happen before we put adequate measures in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, up in the back with your hand up.
Watch that step. Good evening. My name is Deb Iaquinto. I live in Precinct 4. I'm a member of the Plymouth Select Board, but tonight I'm speaking as a concerned citizen. Select Board hat off. I have to say these meetings are beginning to feel a bit like Groundhog Day. We all show up, we raise our serious concerns, they're not addressed in any meaningful way. We all go home, mark our calendars for the next ZBA meeting when we get to do this all over again. Meanwhile, the community concerns are growing, as we've heard here tonight. And since the last meeting, we've learned that part of the proposed development site sits next to an active Superfund site that's still being monitored by the EPA. We learned that arsenic and other harmful chemicals were found in the soil and water and part of the site being developed. And we learned that there's a second purchase and sale agreement with different terms, an agreement that the developer claimed to have no knowledge of. To me, these are bright red flags, and they make me wonder what else we don't know about the integrity of this development. I'm deeply concerned that if this moves forward as proposed, the town will be left responsible for remediating significant environmental and infrastructure problems at a time when we are already struggling to maintain basic services. This is not a not in my backyard situation. These neighbors here tonight speak for the entire town when they ask for reasonable assurances that their streets will be safe, their health will not be at risk, and the environment will not be more negatively impacted than it already is. These are not unreasonable requests. These are serious issues that deserve full and public answers. I believe we should hit the pause button on any decisions about this development until we have full transparency and accountability from the developer. Maybe tonight's the night we finally get that. Thank you.
Thank you. Someone else? Yes.
Hi, I'm Alex Cook, and I'm a butter on Prince Street. First, and for the record, at the last hearing, I noted the issue, despite the developer's claim of the headlight pollution, that it was not resolved. Pulte had said there were some changes in the works. However, I haven't heard anything from them, and tonight was the first time I've seen the new design. Because I've not really had the opportunity to review that design, I don't consider it resolved. I'm not asking for action at this time. At the beginning of the process, it was pretty clear the community wanted to see a reduction in height, but doesn't seem like that's happening. So also for the record, the current design has a pretty significant impact on the privacy and use of our backyard. At the January 13th conservation hearing, a resident raised concerns about the Superfund site, and in response, Pulte stated that the site was simply cleaned up 30 years ago and essentially said it wasn't a problem. Frankly, I find that misleading. The site was only partially remediated. It remains federally deed restricted. There's still toxic soil under a 6-inch cap. And while those parcels are technically, legally, I guess, separate pieces of land with different owners, they share 300 feet of frontage. To my knowledge, there's nothing underground separating the dirt that touches. It was also touched on this evening that the sites aren't abutting, but that doesn't make sense to me. I think what they might be suggesting is that the gravel bike path that connects Sandry to Cordage somehow isn't part of it, but that's about 5 feet wide. That's irrelevant to in the eyes of the EPA, because if you read the 5-year report, in the last report, they did a review, interview, and they wanted to know if there's nearby construction. It doesn't matter if it's directly abutting, it's nearby. It's probably 10 feet away. So I disagree with that characterization. So Pulte's represented this project as a contribution to the community and the state housing needs. There are children as young as 4 months old that are living 1,000 feet from the Superfund site, and there are hundreds of seniors nearby as well. If this project moves forward without that full review, Pulte will build their buildings, deliver its return on to investors, and be gone. But the residents, including my family and my neighbors, could be left with severe, irreversible health consequences that may not reveal themselves for years. Slowing down to ensure public health and safety is the responsible thing to do for both Pulte and the ZBA. Please grant the 90-day extension and let the EPA do its job. Please also perform an independent, detailed soil study. Let's make sure that this is a safe project. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Way back.
Michael Angerami, I live on Atlantic Avenue in North Plymouth. I'm here to continue to talk about safety and what we think the community needs to stay safe. North Plymouth abutters and residents have met recently, and we have a consensus that there are critical safety issues that should stop this Pulte project. Residents have a consensus is that the CBA should deny this building permit. We also believe that the Pulte traffic study has flaws in it. And I know we've been asking for a second study, and maybe that doesn't make sense. But what we're requesting here is a second professional peer review, not from Apex, but from a separate peer review to go back through that study and look for those flaws. And we can probably give them a list if they'd like. The other thing is that if a permit is granted with unresolved issues, the North Plymouth abutters and the residents will appeal to the HCA at the state level. We will appeal. And we want to support, as you just heard, for the 90-day extension to give the APA a chance, to give the peer review a chance to solidify or eliminate these safety issues. As you all know, this site, or this project, I really should say, is under 40B. And we're going to get 41 affordable housing units out of it. And then there will be 122 housing units that will be sold at market price. So we think there's a fair amount of money at stake here. And with the 40B, we bypass all of our rules, our bylaws on zoning.
You have 30 seconds left, sir.
Okay, well, quickly then, bypassing those rules are there to keep Plymouth residents safe. By bypassing those rules and not using them to build, we are putting Plymouth residents at risk. I'll leave the few seconds for the next person.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Hi, my name is Ed DiPiero, and I live on Schooner Way. I've attended all the meetings since we moved here last June, and I haven't heard a word about arsenic, other chemicals at the 8 Mates, or at, I wasn't even aware of this Superfund site, and I'm really concerned as to why none of this was brought up prior by anybody here. And I want to show my support for this 90-day extension to have an EPA review. Some of the comments, I know nothing about remediation, but I was reading through some of the reviews and some of the comments on the Independent, and, you know, it sounds on the surface like it's not a problem. You know, in their most recent 5-year report issued in 2023, EPA officials said there was no evidence contamination had spread to other properties, but they couldn't guarantee it in the future. So that means there's still stuff under there, and they can't guarantee that it won't spread. I'd like to know, how do they assess this, there was no evidence of contamination to adjacent properties? Because just recently in the fall, they found arsenic there, and they were aware of this in the past. From what I understand, there was arsenic and other chemicals. So if the EPA was you know, doing an assessment of these adjacent properties weren't being contaminated, why didn't they find the arsenic or these other chemicals? This was done in 2023, and if you look at the buyer, Pulte, I assume, has identified on the portion of the property at Sandry Drive a historical release of arsenic, historical. So this stuff should have been there for a long time, and why the EPA didn't pick up on it, what is their zone that they test outside of the Superfund zone? And the other thing is, I'm concerned as a chemist, these solvents, such as methylene chloride, which was used extensively everywhere, it's a degreasing agent, it's used to strip paint, everybody used this, mariners, boat yards, And as this solvent goes through the soil, it grabs all of these poisonous organic substances with it, and it's denser than water, so it sits below the water table at
You
the
have
bottom.
30 seconds left, sir.
Okay, thank you. And it's very difficult to remediate. And so what happens when they have pile drivers and backhoes and they're doing this excavation? How far down are they going? And is this water going to seep over? And now you have a resident on it, a residential complex on it. And how do you remediate this with a big residential complex over it? So I think with a lot of these concerns, there should be a 90-day EPA review. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Hi, Sean Benoit, 15 Prince Street. In addition to, the majority of concerns we've heard about the EPA, DEP report and requests for additional time, which I support, I think in light of the recent snowstorm, I wanted to kind of put into, attention how narrow Prince Street has become. There's, 6-7 foot snowbanks, one-lane road. You can't get two by each other. Watching Amazon trucks with oncoming cars, you can make a TV show out of it this week. So just pointing out that adding, the additional traffic on Prince Street, I don't think that is, something that had been factored in. And then secondly, the asbestos drinking water concerns. I don't think we've heard much about their plans for containment, and then just in the construction process, hooking in with the potential contamination, what kind of effects that would have, long term. So I'll yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Who's next? Yes.
Hello, my name is David Rocic. I live at 14 Prince. While I agree with all my neighbors about the Superfund site and granting a 90-day extension, there's additional things that just seem like the bare minimum that Pulte is doing. Looking at this screen that's up right now, I live at 14 Prince, so I'm the corner lot right there adjacent to it. And the woods there right now are great, you know what I mean? And with the amount of trees that are being removed, seeing them add back in just 11 shade trees is kind of disrespectful for everything that they're removing from the site. In addition to that, it's the privacy that you lose. My entire backyard is going to be able to be seen from all 4 floors of this building. It just seems like they're putting the bare minimum to use. And what kind of trees are they going to bring in? Is it going to be something that needs another 15, 20 years to actually grow to provide any kind of coverage or shade or anything like that? They're going to bring in baby trees. You never know. I just think it's a lot of concern with everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you. Someone else? Yes.
So my name is Kevin Canty. I'm also a member of the Plymouth Select Board, but I'm speaking today as a resident of North Plymouth and a resident of Precinct 1, actually. Throughout this entire process, it has been evident, and this has been commented on before, but it continues to be a prescient problem, that this developer, Pulte, continues to do, as the previous speaker alluded to as well, the absolute minimum and sometimes below the minimum in this process. I think they started this process to try and get in before the town was in safe harbor, temporary safe harbor due to our SHI, subsidized housing inventory numbers. And it is evident that they are trying to give as little information to this board, to town departments and divisions to get this process through at a time schedule that works for them, their investors, their shareholders, and not for this community. They seem to care very little about what they are doing in this neighborhood. They also seem to care very little about what they will leave behind. More information continues to come out at each of these hearings. We leave these meetings with more questions than we do with answers, and this continues to be an ongoing problem. I think the timetable being set by Pulte is not in this community's interest or this board's interest. At a minimum, more time should be taken to be able to make an informed decision with all of the data and evidence before you. But ultimately, it would be preferable if this permit were simply denied because of the conduct of this developer and the negative impact that this project would have on this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Someone else? Yes. Yes.
Hi, Trevor Jones. I've lived at 9 Prince Street since 2009 with my wife and my 2 kids. I support the 90-day extension, but I also want to bring up the amount of change that this is going to cause removing all of the woods there as far as storms go and things. Storms are getting stronger. I've seen that happening in my own yard over the years, and this is going to significantly change protection that we get from the woods there. I think that that's going to end up causing more destruction to our property with storms that end up coming up in the future. That's it.
Thank you. I'm going to address something right now. The talk of a 90-day extension, this board has no authority to do that. We are bound by law in the calendar, the scheduling that we have to maintain. And to some of the people that have spoke this evening, I agree 100%. Getting information has been like pulling teeth. And as Mrs. O'Reilly said, I'm not angry, but I'm damn disappointed. And I will tell you that this next coming meeting, we're going to wrap up all of this kind of stuff. And if all of the information isn't here, if all of the stuff that we have asked for is not in our hands and we've had time to digest and study, you're going to have to put up with the vote you get. And we're frustrated. So that the audience understands, we as a board all understand what you're saying. We all wish we could do more, but we are all, the 5 of us, governed by some laws that we have to obey. And it is set up, it's hard for the town to negotiate these things because it's very difficult when you're under a calendar and you're under a whole bunch of things. I'm going to conclude the public comment for the evening because we're coming back again, and I'm going to ask the board what they want to do. What do you want to do, fellas? How many more people want to speak? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
No, they've spoken.
How many of you of those people that want to speak have spoken before? All right, well,
You're up.
I want to hear from somebody that has not spoken.
We haven't had any of this information about the EPA, the Superfund site, the arsenic. This is the first time we've heard this.
How long has the town known about that and didn't say anything?
We don't have a chance to ask.
Okay, go right ahead. Come up to the microphone, identify yourself, go right ahead.
I'm okay with the ones that haven't done it.
Which one are you? Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't see you getting up.
Thank you. I appreciate your apology. My name is Margie Goldstein, and I live on Holmes Terrace in North Plymouth. And I'm not going to speak to you about the EPA or the Superfund site. My main concern is regarding the safety of the intersection of Court Street, Cherry Street, and Prince Street, and I would like to see more thought to go into the safety of this intersection. I worry about how the children will walk safely through this dangerous intersection. I can only imagine that with 163 units, that there are going to be quite a few children living in these buildings, and they will have to somehow get across to Hedge School. I worry about the increase in traffic traveling through this dangerous intersection. I already feel like I am taking my life in my hands every time I turn left from Court Street onto Cherry Street. Cherry Street and Prince Street are misaligned, which in my home state of Connecticut would never have been allowed because such an arrangement is inherently unsafe. I believe that additional study is warranted. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Who else?
Hi, Dennis Farrell, been here all the meetings. I only got one question, it's to the board. The last meeting, you had the question on the purchase and sale agreement. You said you better be back within 48 hours with whatever. Could you please explain what happened with that? Everybody blank stare. Sheehan was here. She said there was a problem within the family. You said that there was not, you didn't have a purchase and sale agreement that was signed, and you gave them 48 hours to straighten it out, to come back with one. So what happened?
Again, you can ask questions, but we're not going to answer Pulte's questions. We're just not going to do that. That's up to them if they want to answer that.
I guess my question is, did they ever send it to the board? The board should be able to answer that, right?
They did.
They did. Well, hopefully we'll find out what happened with it. I mean, was it all, everything was fine? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, go right ahead, Michael.
They have a purchase and sale agreement. You know, the fact that there's other drafts out there has no impact on that, because again, at the time of his date comes, he either exercises that or he doesn't. If there's other drafts out there by the other concerned party, it has no bearing on that, because he can exercise that. I'll give you an example. Out there, this is a situation that happened. There was a piece of property out there the person wanted to buy. It wasn't buildable at the current time. So he ended up spending the money to do a septic permit, ended up putting down a well. At the end, the owner wanted to change it. You can't do that. You know what I'm saying? So he exercised his right at that purchase and sale agreement at that price. The other person might have wanted more money, but it doesn't matter. So anyways, it doesn't matter. It's a draft. That's it.
Thank you.
Don't sign.
Someone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Liz Tracy. I live off Bourne Street, right down the street. With all of the snow, I'm really concerned because they don't have parking. No extra parking for any visitors whatsoever. So where's the snow going to go? Seriously, like, where are they going to put it? 2015, we had tons of snow. Now we don't. But my concern is, in Massachusetts, while there is no universal law requiring a dedicated snow storage building, property owners must ensure adequate, safe areas for snow disposal to maintain accessible features. Structural consideration is required for designated snow accumulation areas. And chemical de-icers must be stored in specialized sheds if located within 200 yards of a water source. I don't know if there's a shed included in this, but it sounds like a law, and I would like to know about that. The other thing is blue spruces. You said you were focusing on native plants. That's not native. It's from the Rocky Mountains. If you want to do a native plant as a tree for a spruce, sorry, I get nervous up here. I would definitely go with a white spruce It grows up to 60 to 100 feet tall. It's beautiful. And it's native. And there's also red and black too, but they're not as pretty as the white ones. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it? Yes.
That was interesting, but okay. On behalf of my neighbors, my name is Samantha Tracy. I live on Prince Street.
Your name, please?
My name is Samantha Tracy. I live on Prince Street. And the question that we have is, if you don't have all the information that you need, and we're a little concerned and a little spooked by the EPA and the Superfund site, is there any way that all parties can agree to put this off for a period of time to get the rest of the information that they need? Because, quite honestly, our homes and our lives are at stake. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. We have no idea what's in that soil. So that's my only question, that's my only comment, and I think it's the most rational and reasonable request.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. This is, I hope, wrapping it up.
Hi, Joyce Daugus, 7 Musterfield. My concern is with that picture right there, the traffic coming out of there. There's CVS driveway right there. Prince Street, I know about one fatal accident, probably more, that happened at that intersection. In Hedge Road, you have the ambulances, you have the fire department coming out of there. It's just not the place to put 3 huge buildings. It's not safe. Something's going to happen. Somebody's going to... These guys want to make all the money. They want to take their money and run. They don't care. They don't live in Plymouth. We all live in Plymouth, and we care. We're looking for a board in Plymouth to help us out, to see what we're talking about here. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to bring this back to the board for board discussion between us and the petitioner, but I am not going to close public comment because we're going to continue this meeting, and during the continuation, I want you folks still to have an opportunity to talk to these people. I'm sure that they've heard what you've said tonight, and we're going to get into it now. Ezek, sir, go right ahead.
Well, I was wondering if the board had more comments first.
Well, yes, go right ahead.
Caroline, hello. So we had a purchase and sale agreement, and the petitioner responded saying that that's still in place. And in relation to the purchase and sale gave 3 options, and in relation to the C is what they're proposing now with all the changes to the site and things like that. Is the option C in front of us tonight?
Based on what was represented earlier, I do not have a copy of the P&S agreement with my file with me here tonight, but no. This is more units than was described as option C by a previous speaker.
So what that means, that we have a right to deny this based on that one issue, because what has been proposed to the state and what was approved by the state is not what's being proposed to us. Am I right?
I don't know that I would respectfully agree with that statement, because the purchase and sale agreement is obviously a contract between private parties versus the site approval application and then the project eligibility letter that was issued by Mass Housing was for a total of 163 or 164 units total.
So Mass Housing approved this based on a purchase and sale agreement.
That is one of the requirements they had to submit as part of their application, yes.
So now that we know that their submittal, or in our opinion, is incorrect, so that comes to site. And so are you in agreement that there's a issue here on that one issue, on the fact that we have a purchase and sale that's different than what they're proposing?
One of the components that the applicant is required to provide to the state for the subsidizing agency is proof of site control. And that proof of site control is usually demonstrated by a purchase and sale agreement. They did indeed submit a purchase and sale agreement. Now, if the number of units under the 3 options doesn't quite square with what was presented to the state, I do think we have to reconcile that. But I don't think it is a basis for denial. If there is something that needs to be worked out between the buyer and the seller about those options, that's a private contractual matter between them. If we think something has been misrepresented to the state, I think we certainly have to take a look at that, but my recollection was that the project eligibility letter for both sites cumulatively was the 163 or 164 units.
So the fact that we have a purchase and sale that is different than what they're proposing, and we don't know, because I look at the purchase and sale as site control.
Yes.
That's what's being sold. And so I look at it as an issue with site control. And I think that's an issue that is from this board to look at. If we don't have in front of us a contract that gives site control.
If I may.
Yes.
And there is case law, and it begins with a City of Amesbury Housing Appeals Committee decision that matters of whether or not an applicant is eligible to be an applicant for a 40B. When you go through the regulations, they have to be either a public entity, a limited dividend organization, or a public organization. They also have to demonstrate to the subsidizing agency that they have site control. Not that they own the site, but that they do contractually at least have site control. And once the subsidizing agency makes those determinations that you have an eligible applicant before you, there is case law that says this Zoning Board of Appeals does not get to question those matters with respect to site control or their eligibility as an applicant. So it is not a basis for us to deny. Certainly is a basis for us to question. How do we get from 132 units, if that's what was in the original P&S agreement, as option 3 to where we are today? I think that's a valid question for this board to ask and to get an answer to. At our last meeting, as you know, Member Conroy, you specifically asked for, have there been any amendments to this purchase and sale agreement? And you requested that information within 48 hours. We were told there were no amendments to the purchase and sale agreement. So I think it is a valid question to ask, but not a basis for denial.
So you bring up a couple different points. So would it be worth our time to look at the Housing Commission and say that we now know that there's a different deal?
Excuse me.
1 second, sir. I don't want to be interrupted.
Apologies.
So is it worth the town's time to go to the Housing Commission to see, would they revoke their approval of this because we have a different site matter going on here? Would it be, instead of, you're saying we can't deny it, but their approval was based on a contract, which is now not the contract? Can that be done? Or is that worthwhile?
Can we reach out to Mass Housing and can we ask that question? Yes, we can.
Is it worth, okay, fine. And say Mass Housing comes back and says that that's not what we approved. Is that a basis for denial?
I think it would be a basis for Mass Housing that if they were to find that the applicant doesn't truly have site control, it might be a basis for Mass Housing to reevaluate their project eligibility agreement or a letter. And if that project eligibility letter was revoked or rescinded then that certainly has an impact on the proceedings before this board.
All right. So through the commissioner, can we ask Caroline to do that for us? Or can you move forward with that, please?
Certainly.
And a couple other things, Buster. So also, and thank you for that. And so it was in the Independent that there was an amendment that was never signed. So it's public knowledge that we were lied to. Everyone knows it. But nothing was signed. Then I'd like to talk about the site. Jason, at this site, are there any, I've heard that there's arsenic on that site? Or is it separate next door from the site? Does the town know any contaminants on the site? All right.
So can I respond?
Not yet, sir, please.
You're asking that.
I know, but I'm not asking you. I'll ask you when I'll ask you.
I appreciate it.
Thank
Sorry, I
you.
wasn't sure
So,
what the
yes,
question was
I'm
directed.
not asking you.
Thank you.
So Jason,
You need this? Oh, sorry.
At this time, Inspectional Services does not have any specific information in regard to EPA sites or contaminations. We don't record, nor do we manage or have any authority over environmental or anything like that. And so, again, we're not even a repository for any of that information, so we have no direct knowledge.
so we have no direct knowledge that on the site there's nothing environmental. So from my standpoint, has anything, Caroline, do you know of anything submitted? There was 700 and something pages this last week. 704. And so we've looked at thousands of pages here, this board, over 1,000 that we try to keep track of. Do we know of anything on this site that, like the building department saying they have no record of any contaminants on this site? Do we know of any contaminants on this site?
There was nothing in this most recent submission that addresses that I saw.
Okay. So Jason, sorry. So there was talk about having a peer review of the soil test. Is that what, like I'm trying to figure out, they looked at the, I'm trying to understand this peer review of soil.
So in my lay interpretation of these kinds of scenarios, there's soil evaluations that are done by engineers in order to assess the soils for specific needs like foundation systems or drainage systems or landscaping materials, looms and things like that. And then there are assessments that are done on soils by engineers to determine whether there's contaminants in those. Those types of evaluations are done by basically state and organizations that have nothing to do with our department. So we might see a report that's done, but those things are exclusive of construction or development. Cleanup or EPA sites or funds have no building permit requirements. We might get notified of actions that go on, but they're just general notifications. And so at this time, we have no specific notifications from DEP or EPA that there are anything going on that they need our participation in or need our information in or want to make us aware of. There may be, as the residents are indicating, some things that have gone on an adjacent site, but those are, again, are exclusive of construction permits or any development permits.
All right. So you want to talk, Buster?
Yeah, can you step back for a minute? I want to call another person. Our peer review, Apex person is here. Darren Stairs, are you? Yes, please. Maybe we can clear up some of this stuff.
I'll do my best. Darren Stairs with Apex Companies, Quincy. What would you like to ask me?
Well, go right ahead.
So you represent the town.
Yes, sir.
And I'm trying to wrap my head. I've read a lot of stuff about this case, and I read Apex's work product. And from what what have you reviewed in relation to contaminants on this site,
So Apex has been retained to review stormwater, wastewater, so the sewer and the water system. And then we were separately retained to review some of the traffic at the beginning as well. We have not done anything on the environmental side.
All right. Say we were to engage you to do a soil sample that the town would pay for, because I don't think it's legal to have the petitioner pay for it. How long would it take for you to do that?
I don't know if I can answer that question honestly right now. It's something that we obviously would have to, we have an environmental division out of Connecticut, so we'd have to bring folks up, find a driller to do the sampling.
Or what about a peer review? Is there any other work product from the EPA that one of your, instead of you doing a sampling, could go analyze work product from government agencies as to the site? And I'm not concerned about next door. It's not our issue. What we're issued about is can you do some work? And I think the selectmen would pay for that. So the selectmen would pay for that. And so I'd like to find out if we could analyze any public information and peer review it. Would your company be able to do that for us? Because if there's a problem with the site environmentally, this can be rejected based on that.
So typically on these sites, what I've seen is the applicant has prepared an environmental analysis, phase 1, phase 2, and you might ask them when they come back up here if they've done that. That is something we would peer review.
So one question is to ask them to peer review if they've done a phase 1 and phase 2, and ask Apex to peer review the phase 1 and phase 2.
Sure.
So because we're under a time constraint, what I'm going to ask you to do, kind of like marching orders a little bit, is if they do have a phase 1 and phase 2 done, I'd like you folks to look at it. And we'd also like to see the turnaround time for you to go to the site and do a soil sample. Because we cannot, the petitioner in court can say, if we can't get it done in time, and sorry, Charlie. And so we're dealing with a time constraint. So I'd like to look at two different things, the peer review of the phase 1 and phase 2, and then possible a soil analysis. And when you go to do the soil analysis, would that be enough to determine if there's contaminants, in your opinion, to a reasonable doubt to the site if you did those two action items?
I'm sorry, sir, what was your question?
So there's two action items. One is to review the phase 1 and phase 2, the peer review, and then the second action item would be give me a time frame and see if you can get it done to do a soil sample at the site.
Yeah, so the first part of the question I can answer fairly easily. If we're provided with any environmental reports, we could do those in our normal, three-week turnaround time. Performing a soil analysis, and I will confess to you, I am not an environmental engineer, I'm a civil engineer. That's a bit more complicated. It's not a matter of just going to the site and taking one sample, because I'm sure our neighborhood would not think that was representative of what's going on out there. So it would be a much more intensive process, and that's why I would defer to the applicant to see if they've done any of that testing, or if they have access to any testing that's done in the vicinity.
Is there any research that can be done by your firm about the environmental condition of the property where we don't have to rely on the petitioner?
We can certainly look at the Superfund site documentation, which the neighborhood has had access to, and it's all public record, and we could review that for you.
Okay, so so there's three action items then. One action item is to review the Phase 1 and Phase 2. Second action, and if the petitioner's done one. Second action item, which may be more difficult, is do the soil analysis. Third action item would be to any public information out there where that is not provided by the petitioner, that will analyze, give us, whether to the best of your knowledge, because that's a major, major issue.
Sure, understood.
So
All right, so Buster, I'd like to call up the petitioner.
go ahead.
Has a Phase 1 and Phase 2 been performed?
Yes, and so if I can expound on the soil sampling of the site, as well as a number of other things related to the purchase and sales. So as part of our due diligence effort, when we look at a property, one of the things that we do is do soil testing for exactly this reason. And it was exactly how that arsenic was discovered in the soil is because when we were conducting our due diligence, we discovered it. And if you read through the PNS does not state that we state that the site is clean. The PNS states that we will not purchase the site unless it is deemed clean. So therefore, the property owner filed a RDA with the Concom, which I actually did discuss to this board earlier on in the process. They introduced the need to do soil removal. It was within a buffer zone that was within the Concom jurisdiction, so they needed to get an RDA from the Concom. They successfully got the RDA. They're in the process of removal of that, and they are conducting their testing. Their testing is over a certain period of time. They have filed a remedial action measure with
And this is for this site?
That's correct.
So arsenic was found on this site?
That's correct. And they filed a remedial action measure as through Mass DEP regulations and requirements. It is, in Massachusetts, in development, it is not entirely unheard of to find contaminants in sites and to perform a cleanup. This cleanup is monitored and is highly regulated by Mass DEP. You're able to actually go access and see those files online through Mass DEP's websites. The most recent report was put out last month in January that documents very detailed what was found and what the measures are being taken to remediate and clean up and continue to monitor the site. And this is the site that is Sandry Drive, where we are proposing that building.
One second. Does the board know that this was all done, this is going on?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Apex, did you hear that? Yes, sir. Can you share those items with the Apex folks?
Darren, I'm happy to share all the information that we have with you. And again, to be fair, we are not the ones that are conducting that work.
I saw the indemnification language. I understand
that is
how it
the
works.
seller, and that is what
Yes.
is required of them. In addition, for the PNS discussion that happened before, I would like to see evidence of a PNS that says that we are restricted to 132 units that was mentioned. This is not known to me, I haven't seen this document.
So
Does the board have a copy of a document that states that we are restricted to 132 units?
So don't try to wordsmith out of your lie, sir. You said there was no amendment. No. He's going to raise his voice? No. What happened is there was a purchase and sale, and then there's public knowledge that there's an amendment that's circulated that hasn't been signed. And so your attorney went up and said there's no amendments going on there's nothing unsigned.
That's correct, sir.
So
There isn't an amendment that has been signed.
100%. And I asked, was there an amendment being worked on? Was there anything in the works? And then we got an email. To be clear, there's only one purchase and sale agreement. Yes,
that is correct.
But that's not our question.
I'm not aware of a purchase and sales document that restricts us to selling 132 units, or the contract is null and void.
Thank you for your bit of information. So in relation to the soil sample, Apex, have you seen the soil sample before today? Or have you analyzed the soil sample?
I have not reviewed those
wait a minute, now,
Okay, fine. All right, so will you share the information you have with Apex about the soil sample?
I will confirm with the property owner that they are comfortable with us sharing their documentation, and I will share as they are. Again, as mentioned, this is not our effort that we are conducting. We are under agreement on the site with the stipulation that the seller provide us with a clean site. We are not the ones that are in charge of doing that cleanup.
All right, thank you. Caroline, if it's discovered that we don't have a clean site, is that a reason to decline this application?
So this whole DEP Superfund discussion that we've been having, in Massachusetts, it's governed by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 21E. The state, as we see through the websites and the DEP's documentation, they oversee the responsible parties, the reportings, the monitoring, and holding the responsible party accountable for what they are required to do. Again, there is an appellate court decision where another 40B developer wanted to develop a site that had some evidence of contamination from a prior use, and where that was all governed by requirements and obligations of the property owner to clean up and remediate the site under Chapter 21E. The appeals court and the Housing Appeals Committee said that is not within the purview of the Zoning Board of Appeals to consider with respect to affordable housing. So if we have some sort of local rule about soil testing and environmental aspects of a site that perhaps we can point to locally, then maybe there is a basis for us to deny. But if we're relying entirely on...
Could you repeat what you just said?
If there, whether we're talking about environmental aspects or we are talking about any other sort of public health and safety aspect, in order for this ZBA to deny a 40B project, you have to be able to cite to some local rule, whether that is a bylaw, whether that is a local regulation, something that we can point to that we say raises a matter of public health and safety, and while we're at it, that public health and safety issue outweighs the need for affordable housing. Or also said a little bit differently, that there is nothing that the applicant can do to mitigate those public health and safety concerns. So if the applicant has a P&S agreement that says the seller has to deliver a clean site, then that is the private contractual arrangement between Pulte and the seller to get to that clean site, and the state is going to monitor whether or not this is in fact a clean site. And if that site can't be cleaned, then I suspect this P&S agreement goes away and this whole project, or at least part of the project, likely goes away. But we have to be able to base our decision on a local bylaw or a local regulation that was in place at the time that they filed their application for this project.
Jason, say we have a situation where there's arsenic on a site, and the Superfund litigation, everyone gets sued and everyone's 100% liable. A contract doesn't get one party away from the environmental liability from the next. So if we know a site is contaminated, is there any local laws that say you cannot issue a certificate of occupancy if we know that it's not clean, or a building permit?
So in the state building code, there are effectively mirroring regulations that would speak to the fact that, you know, one state regulation won't allow you to violate effectively another state regulation. So arguably there is something in the state building code that will speak to saying that this permit is not to be issued in violation of another state regulation. It's part of the administrative provisions of the code. State, like as an example, Title V, sanitary septic systems, portable water. And so, again, we are not the authority of Title V or of, you know, of these kinds of things. But, you know, that would effectively prohibit the owner, independent of our office, from completing that. Those agencies would take their own authoritative action. So as an example, DEP would show up, or EPA would show up to the site, or OSHA would show up to the site. We don't enforce those regulations, although we work parallel to them.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
Sir, I'd refer you to page 12, section 9 of the purchase and sales that says pretty much exactly that, that until there is an approval and certification from Mass DEP, we wouldn't even be interested in purchasing the site, let alone actually moving forward with any construction on it.
Go ahead.
Slightly different issue, but Mr. Petrie, I noticed that Attorney Serkey's facial expressions when you said there was not any other limit to housing there that you were aware of. And Attorney Serkey, you stand by what you told us earlier?
I'm not going to let him speak.
Oh, he's speaking now.
No.
No? I mean, just to clarify this?
I'm
All
sorry,
right.
Mr. Connor,
Make-
Mr. Connor, can you repeat your question?
You're on a limited time scale. Well, you stated 3 options
Yeah.
for the building.
Correct.
And I believe Mr. Petrie said he wasn't aware of such a thing that limited that.
Oh, that's stated right in the purchase and sale agreement, and you have a copy of it in your file. It says Project A, Project B, or Project C. It doesn't describe this project, which is 163 units. That's as simple as that.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
And I think our attorney has kind of cleared that point up. And we're not going to argue about that anymore.
Do you have a copy of this?
Oh, did I miss
I was
something?
told that there was an unredacted copy circulating among the board.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I was asked whether there was an unredacted copy of the purchase and sale agreement available, and I was told, as recently as today, that that's been circulated among the board, so that's a matter of public knowledge.
That's news to me, but more importantly, though, as far as to the option C that is being referenced, it is not specifically required that a certain number. It is setting a minimum, which then of market rate units versus affordable units, which then sets the base of what the purchase price would be. That's where that number, those numbers are referenced, setting that base of what that purchase price would be. The seller has not limited the amount of units that we could build on it, because then the contracted purchase price, if you read through it, would increase along with that. So it does not at all in there say that we are limited to building a option that only has 132 units.
Okay.
Thanks.
And that, I think that that's what Carolyn said earlier about the whole purchase and sales agreement.
Sorry.
Could I also ask another question? I'm sorry. There was mention that there is a unredacted version of the purchase and sales that is being circulated publicly. Is the board aware of this?
So through the independent, supposedly the independent, the paper has a copy, not the board, paper. So yes, it's public knowledge, but I'd like to see a copy of that if you have that. It's public knowledge.
I have the redacted version, which is the one that was, which should be being publicly circulated. That, I'm not sure where the reference to another version.
So you want to contact the paper?
No, I mean, because it's actually kind of moot, because what was being referenced isn't actually accurate, but it's just a little concerning that there is a version of the document that was not shared by us or the seller that is being circulated publicly, even though it's being cited incorrectly here.
Yes, David?
On a totally different line, I'm certainly concerned about all the soils and the contamination. I want to come back to your statement that there were 5 off-site amenities that were discussed between you and the town a while back, and you're saying you would not agree to replace the water line in Prince Street. But the other 4 items you are proposing to provide as an amenity and a public benefit. Is that correct?
I did state that we are proposing to offer the 4 items as discussed, yes.
But not the replacement of the...
I didn't mention that, but now that you bring that up...
That was in your letter you provided us.
In the letter.
And now
Understood.
I would just point...
I will say that is something that is not included in this current package as it stands today. That was included, as mentioned, as part of an overall development agreement where Pulte was in coordination with members of the town staff, including members of the select board, to develop a prioritization list together that would then went to the select board for signature for the development agreement, including all of those items, and the select board decided against signing it.
But on your letter of February 2nd, you say you agree to 4 of them, but not the Prince Street water line, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Now, I would point out on recent 40Bs that are underway or approved, the Oasis kicked in a significant amount of money to traffic improvements, and the Canso Avalon contributed to a significant amount toward the booster pump for the water. And my current judgment is that the amenities you're offering, the 4 out of 5, does not match the sort of quality of the proposed comparable 40Bs. So I think replacement of that 1,200 feet of water line is an important part to balance the disruption to the community. A benefit of a replaced water line would be a good thing. So your response?
I understand your comment. That was why it was included as part of the original development agreement, because at the time, based on the agreement that was being discussed with the select board, we also agreed that through the cooperation with the town that did feel commensurate to other projects, as you mentioned, relative to the number of units for our project and the Canso relative number of units for their project. It felt like a good balance. The select board did not agree.
Okay, and thank you. I don't agree either, but I just wanted to mention it to the group that's here, that's part of the back and forth. I mean, it's our job to listen to the community and also listen to you and your consultants and then apply our judgment to the particular project. This is one I wanted your current thinking on. Thank you.
So I wasn't going to bring it up until the next hearing, but on waivers, we're going to ask that you supply the waivers you're requesting. But one thing, remember, David, is the other, like especially, well, both Oasis and Avalon, their agreements also waive the fees for connections and so on and so forth. So you're not asking what I saw in that. You're not asking for any waivers for the connections and stuff. In other words, on your new proposal, right?
Stephanie was in there. I'd have to go look at the waivers exactly, but I believe that we were asking for waivers from, the water, I believe, as we were proposing the water loop connection, felt that that was appropriate, that we were providing that connection, which improves water quality and water pressure in the area, that it was appropriate to ask for waiver for just those fees for the affordable units. Originally, as part of the overall development agreement, that was one of the items that was included that we were asking for in exchange for all 5 of those items, was the waiver of all of those fees.
All right, well, we'll wait that when we get to the waivers.
Yeah, it's going to be important to, there's a lot of waivers, that in both DPW memoranda have items that have to be done before building permit or done before occupancy permit. So there's a long list of waivers to review.
And one other thing I want to point out is there's actually 2 applications here. So Sandry is separate than Prince and Court Street. They're 2 separate cases. So basically, the contamination only applies to Sandry. I'd be right, Callan?
There were 2 separate project eligibility letters that were
Right.
issued, one for 100 units and then one for 63 units. So yes, even though we've been treating them in a parallel track, yes, they have been
Yeah,
2 separate.
so they've got to be voted different, so that as far as the contamination, the 2 closest to the center, up top, north, they called it, that's a separate case in a way. It's one, okay.
Pete? David?
Except for now.
Ed? Have you anything else?
The only thing I think,
Go ahead, Michael.
so I did have one question I did have one question on one of the reports, let me see, who was it done by? Weston and Sampson. They did reference the water pressure on Prince Street, and they were saying they were recommending a booster pump on that. Was that?
That's correct, yeah. For Building 2 off Prince Street, the recommendation is for a booster pump.
And is that in the plans?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, all right.
All set? Have you anything else you would like to add? Yes, before you do, Jason, go right ahead.
I may be a little ahead of the game, but I want to try and get the point to the board in early before they do start considering, you do start considering the waivers. Inspectional Services issues permits, and we're a service-based department. In the case of Canso, we did waive certain permit fees, but the public received some benefit in exchange for that, right? So the public is effectively subsidizing or not, not receiving the permit fees, but at the end of the day, they're not having to pay for this water booster station. In this case, this applicant, I'd request that there's no permit fees waived through our office, as those permit fees, if waived, would be subsidized by the residents paying the staff to do those inspections. So again, on our behalf, I'd request that when the board considers those waivers, that building permit fees, electrical fees, plumbing fees, et cetera, would not be waived on this project. Thank you.
Go ahead. Anything else?
Before we wrap, I just wanted to ask respectfully if there are any specific requests for documents or information that you would like to see or have prior to our next meeting?
Everything. Everything. Seriously.
As noted, sir.
It's been like pulling teeth. Things have changed dramatically, and a lot of time, 700-page drop, a 800-page drop. We're volunteers. We want certain things. We want to see blueprints. I understand blueprints. I don't want 125 pages of charts of flow of stormwater for 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. I want to know, will it handle a 5, 10, 15, and 20-year thing? When we have to sit down with this damn thing and start scrolling through, that is really, really frustrating. Again, I'm not mad, I'm frustrated.
And
Okay?
sir,
You can do a better job, and I know this because I've sat on quite a few of these. He taught me, okay? And he wouldn't let this happen like this. We need documentation, and we want it now. So just go back to your headquarters, get all of your papers together as a proposal of what this project is going to look like when you come to us next meeting. All of it. Yes.
The one thing I do want to request is that the waiver list be a current and complete list, not, in other words, I don't want to have to refer back to the old ones and figure out which is new, which is old. So I'd like a current,
yeah, absolutely.
because this has changed, you know?
I don't know if that's me.
Well, whoever's running this microphone, can you fix that? Thank you.
My understanding is that, and up to the board's discretion, that our next meeting the topic would be waiver list, so I think it's absolutely appropriate and makes complete sense that we will have the updated waiver list to you well in advance of that meeting, which I date it TBD.
All right. We're going to get a real good blueprint of landscaping for all 3 buildings?
That was,
I know we have it,
that was
but-
included. I'm happy to provide like full-size hard copies if that's more appropriate and
It
preferred.
would be really at least one of them so that we board members can look at it and say, what page is it on? And, oh, we got to scroll over this way and magnify this and shut this down. It's frustrating.
So, sir, that is a perfect example. That's a great request that I'm happy to get you full-size hard copies. The process for the permitting application is all electronic, so from my perspective, I was under the impression that we were checking all the boxes, but I'm happy to provide you with a full-size set of hard copies. 2? 3? How many sets would you guys like? 5?
Sure. You want a copy, David? Absolutely, David.
We'll do 5 sets then.
Yeah, you better make 5
Sure
copies.
thing. 5 cents.
We're just unhappy with the town.
I understand, and I'm happy to provide that, and any other specific requests.
Thank you. Now, is there anything else that we can yell at each other about? Go right ahead.
And one other question I had on my mind before all this. When I did ask you for the, what you were going to do for off-site improvements, and you did address that, the one thing did also address was who's responsible for what. So on this loop, are you doing the complete loop, or is the town responsible for certain parts? What's the story with that?
No, so we would be taking on the construction of it, and we would be working with the water department for the connection piece under the town of Plymouth standard regulations, but we would be doing that construction though.
Okay, so you would, excavate it, put the pipe in, regrade it, and seed it or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. And again, it would just be under the direction of the town DPW, but we would be doing that construction.
Okay, all right.
And if you have nothing else to add, I'm going to ask our secretary when would be the next appropriate meeting.
March 16th, if Attorney Murray is available.
Okay. You're going to be here, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like our next hearing will be March the 16th at 6 PM.
And just to confirm, the focus of that will be on the waiver list, and as well as we can add anything else, but we'll make sure that we are prepared and expecting to be presenting to the waiver list.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, that works. Thank you.
Okay. Good for you, Carolyn? Okay. So I await a motion.
Move to close, to adjourn?
No.
Move to continue. March 16th at 6 PM.
Thank you.
And with that, all right.
Hey, folks, please, we haven't finished this yet. Please. Okay, now, we have a motion on the floor to continue this meeting to March the 16th at 6 PM. All those in favor? All right. It is a unanimous vote. Now you can go home. It had to be recorded, and we couldn't record it with you all standing
Okay.
there.
Now I will make a motion to adjourn.
I got a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
5 seconds. All those in favor?
Adjourn.
We are adjourned.